Welcome to the Body and Beyond podcast with Alice and Gina.
A podcast sparking discussion on all things health, mindset, fitness, goals, and motivation.
We strive to help you to boost your confidence, to take the lead in your own life, to back yourself, and to step into your full potential. Body and Beyond is proudly sponsored by The Seed Cycle. The Seed Cycle is a beautiful female-founded Australian company. Seed cycling is a natural methodology that you can use to support your menstruation and your ovulation, and it can even be used to support your hormones through perimenopause and menopause. If you'd like 50% off your first month subscription, use the code BODYANDBEYOND at the Seed Cycle website www.theseedcycle.com.au. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Body and Beyond podcast. Today we are talking about the power of habits, routines, and rituals. And this is part one. We're going to have two parts, aren't we, Al?
We are. So part two, we're going to go into more detail about how you can actually start to implement new habits, or if you're someone who wants to adjust habits that you currently have or break down habits that you have as well. We're going to chat more about that in part two. But today, Gina, what are we going to talk about today specifically?
So we wanted to recognize today that habits are a massive part of who we are. What many people don't know is that we have the power within us to actually build or break habits to serve our goals and also help us succeed in life and emulate what it is that we truly want as we create our identity. So it's in our power to move towards what it is that we want and actually shape our identity. Basically, we're not static, we're not stuck the way we are. We do have the power to shift and change.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And one of the biggest, probably first things that you need to remember when we think of habits and rituals, right? Because people often identify themselves or identify a habit as a character flaw. So something that they do as a person that's inherited, or it's just something a part of who they are, when really it's not a character flaw, but it's just simply a design flaw, a design in the way that they have, implemented different routines or habits into their lifestyle. So
exactly.
Do you have any examples, Gina, of that?
Well, the other thing I wanted to bring up as well is that sometimes it's like you mentioned, so this is predominantly from Tiny Habits, is that right?
Yeah.
And who's the author of Tiny Habits?
That's BJ Fogg.
Yeah, okay. And so, yeah, he really, really supports the fact that, it's potentially a design flaw. And I wanted to say that it's potentially a design flaw of the individual, or perhaps something that they've actually inherited from their upbringing, so from their families, or the way their families think, the way their families behave, and they've just kind of inherited that as the way things are for them, which is really interesting. So what could be an example? I mean, some people think that their family is big boned, as an example, or that they don't exercise, or they're not a very active family, for example, and that's inherited through into their way of being.
Exactly. I mean, that's a very probably common one. I think more common than people probably realize is people associating themselves with being overweight and just associating that as a part of who they are, and how, that's the person they're going to be for the rest of their life. That's part of who they are.
Yeah.
They don't realize, almost so they probably do realize they have the power to actually change that. Mm-hmm. Maybe they do realize, maybe they don't. But I think a lot of the time people do tell themselves that it is a part of who you are, which can, I think, really stop people from succeeding in life in so many different things, not just with fitness and health goals, but with career goals, with relationships as well. I think in terms of relationships, you often hear people say, this is just who I am, or this is just what I do. That's just me. Yeah. But, I guess one thing I've always I've started to realize as I do get a little bit older is, we are also evolving as people in our personalities and, working on yourself, working on your traits. They're all kind of intertwined with daily habits and rituals as well.
Exactly.
So people who associate themselves with being lazy or unfit, or someone who doesn't like to exercise is an example.
I was about to say that as well. So it's a very static viewpoint, someone saying I'm not fit. And it's really interesting because when someone allows themselves to continue to repeat that, I'm not fit, or I'm big boned, or I'm overweight, they're actually giving themselves permission to stay in that static position. Then they're not seeing it as a process, like you were mentioning before. Like, life is a process. Every single component of your life is a process. And I think, like, some people don't realize that, or they're yet to realize that. Potentially later in life they will realize. But it's not static. And if you can, so for everyone listening, if you catch yourself saying things that make it a static viewpoint, that kind of cement you where you are, pay attention to that and see if you can start to give yourself more flexibility.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, I think we've all had, we can all relate, at some point in our lives where you kind of have these thoughts where you just, pin yourself to a certain belief about yourself or a certain habit that you have. But I think it's really empowering to remember that you actually have the power and control to change it and to evolve. So that's more what we wanted to discuss today, I guess, as well. In general, just power of how we can really change and adapt our habits and routines to create our identity, I guess.
And I might just jump in there. Exactly. Like, you have the power to evolve or the power to change. But the other important point is that you have the power to choose to not. And that's okay as well. So we're not on here saying everyone needs to evolve and level up and etc. Like, that's it. The other thing is, like, what's important is that you know that you have the power of choice. And then if you choose to stay the same, that's okay as well. But at least it's an empowered decision. It's not, this is just the way I am.
Exactly. And I think it comes down to that awareness as well, because that leads into us chatting more about, there are some people who are very aware of their daily habits or habits in general. They're very aware of rituals and routines that they put in place each day. And then there's people who don't pay attention to it at all and are kind of running on autopilot, right?
Yeah.
And that's the same for, whether you're running on autopilot or whether you do make more conscious decisions around implementing habits and routine in your lifestyle. It's more about, I guess, being aware of habits, routines, and rituals, and whether you want to change something or not, or whether you're just aware that you do something. It's your choice as to whether you want to change it or not. And we were saying earlier about how, and something that I asked on my Instagram story actually just before we started, and that was how many people out there are actually conscious of their daily routines and habits, and are they consciously trying to change or evolve or, shape their daily routine or habit in any way? Or are you someone who kind of runs on autopilot, which, like you said, Gina, earlier as well, we all have habits, whether you realize it or not. We all have daily habits. It's just whether you're aware that you're doing them or not.
Yeah. So, exactly.
I think being aware, though, really does give you a little more power, making change or not making change.
Yeah, it's interesting. And a lot of the time, the kind of person who does research into this kind of thing, or reads books, or, does a bit of self-development type work, or reads self-development type books, they're the kind of people who are consuming this information and are then able to be more aware.
So I guess, what are some of the things that we would need to think about if you're in the boat of wanting to pay more attention to the habits you're doing or wanting to implement something new? Obviously, we're going to go into deeper detail of how to implement habits in part 2 of the podcast, but maybe we could talk over some of the real basic stuffs when it comes to implementing new habits.
Yeah. So one of the first important steps, and a lot of research has shown this, but actually visualizing the process ahead of you in regards to carrying out or actioning the early stages of the habit, or what are the steps and stages of performing that habit. So a lot of research shows that actually visualizing and walking yourself through the process, what are the steps and stages, so doing that mentally in your mind can actually help you when it comes time to fire and actually perform the habit. You've basically already practiced it in your mind. So apparently that is a really, really powerful, it's shown by a lot of research that is a powerful way to take the first step in actually moving towards that habit or making it part of your daily routine or your daily way of being?
Well, I definitely know a lot about visualization with life and goals, right? And we hear about it all the time, especially with people who are extremely successful when it comes to careers or life goals. You know, a lot of the time these people do talk a lot about visualization on its own, right? So it only makes sense that if you're wanting to achieve a small goal, it doesn't matter how big it is, if it's just something tiny that you're trying to implement, visualization is definitely something that is science-backed that can help us to achieve and to move forward with the goals. So I definitely think that's an important topic. And we can probably do a specific podcast on visualization on its own topic itself as well down the track.
That's a really good point. And so a really simple example of that could be, and like we're thinking, you know, health and fitness related, but say someone really honestly, they find it really challenging to get out of bed, get ready to go to the gym in the morning. This could be a really nice, simple example to walk through. But say, you know, you're falling asleep, you're going to sleep, you're going to bed that night before, that's the opportunity to then visualize the alarm or mentally rehearse the alarm going off, you getting out of bed, turning off the alarm. What happens next? Pull the sheets up, then proceed to go to the toilet, clean your teeth, have a glass of water, put your gym clothes on, do up your shoelaces. You know exactly where your keys are, for example, grab your keys, start the car, drive to the gym. So that was a bit quick, but I'm sure there's different steps and stages between there, but it's really helping the person break down those different components. So you've already mentally rehearsed it. And then in the morning, you just follow through on that mental rehearsal and voila, you have now executed on that new habit.
Do you know what? Something else that made me, that I actually utilize a lot, and this comes in with visualization, and that's actually visualizing or feeling the feeling of what it feels like. So actually, when you are taking yourself through that visualization of achieving whatever it is that you want to achieve, actually sitting with the feeling of what it feels like now that you've achieved the goal. So what does it feel like? Like you've woken up every day this week and you've managed to get out of bed, go to the gym, and you've crushed your training session. Like, how do you feel? And being able to sit there and actually feel that feeling is also something that personally really helps me. It's something that I do a lot in competition as well. So on stage day, imagining how I'm going to feel if I nail this, or imagining how I feel when I'm going to get to the end of the week and I've lined up all my things. Like that feeling of being able to know how you're going to feel to succeed at it is a real driver for me when it comes to actually lining things up and doing it as well. So,
and that's really cool to hear that you do that, Al, because that's actually an NLP technique called anchoring. So basically you are referencing, or you're either creating the desired feeling or the desired like internal feeling, or you can reference a past time where you've experienced that feeling, and then you can basically anchor that, you know, emotional way of feeling to the task at hand, which is super powerful. So yeah, so it's really great for anyone wanting to, with that simple example before, but that feeling someone may have of just being proud of themselves for getting the fuck out of bed and actioning what they've been wanting to do for weeks and weeks and weeks, and they finally action that, and just allow yourself to be proud of that feeling. You may be referencing that from the past and then bringing that to the present moment.
Yeah, I think they're two huge helpers when it comes to goal setting and achieving goals and habits. So yeah.
The other thing that you mentioned was that it's really important to have those little opportunities to feel successful that can really help you wire in new habits.
Exactly. One of the things that stuck with me in the book that I'm reading, Tiny Habits, is the fact that people succeed from feeling good. They don't succeed from feeling shit. And we were just trying to clarify that earlier as well. When we say that, like, people don't succeed from feeling shit, it's not so much that initial feeling of, you know, you're sick of feeling a certain way and you really want to improve your lifestyle. that's a different story. We're talking about when you're actually implementing small things into your routine, when you're actually on the roll of trying to make change. That feeling of success when you do tick something off the box in the morning, it might be literally the smallest thing, like you got up on the first alarm this morning, like that sense of success is already setting you up for the day. And that is what is going to keep you going and moving forward and progressing. So that comes back to, I guess, setting tiny goals and goals or habits that are achievable that you know you're going to succeed at, because that feeling of success is what is going to help you to keep on rolling through and progressing.
Yeah, exactly. And something we might go into in part 2 is exactly what you're saying. Like, what are those little linchpin habits? What's the first catalyst, or what's that first small aspect, or the first domino that needs to fall to give you that feeling of success and start moving you in the right direction?
Yeah, exactly.
And the other thing we wanted to discuss today was, like we did mention really briefly before, but if you're trying to set up a new habit, are you able to actually find deep within you what is the emotional connection that you can connect or link to that new habit that you're trying to create? So you want to wire that in, and that can really help to give you power and momentum when it comes time to execute on the habit. So it's not just about making yourself do the habit. It's actually you feel internally driven and emotionally connected to perhaps the version of you that you are becoming by executing on that habit.
Do you have any examples of that yourself, Gina?
Well, yeah, I actually do. So during the last lockdown, and this is probably my own personal experience of consciously doing this myself. So during the last lockdown, I, like I'm sure a lot of people have been, was in a bit of a rut, and I was in this place where I was, obviously everything is shut down, but we were still kind of busy, and there's kind of tedious things that still needed to be done with the business. And I almost had the opportunity, so it was almost like a little bit of self-sabotage, where I had the opportunity to step into and execute on some things I'd been wanting to do. However, I found myself procrastinating and not actually executing on those things, as I'm sure a lot of people can relate. And so what I actually did was the habit that I've now been doing ever since then is having a cold shower for 3 minutes every single day. And there's only been a few occasions where I haven't executed on it, but most days since then I had a really cold shower. In regards to linking the emotion to that, and I actually also used audio. So I actually used a song. It's actually a Rufus Du Sol song called Solace. So I actually linked that audio or that music to the emotion as well. And yeah, basically allowed the lyrics as well to connect and wire in that emotion to performing the new habit, which was having the cold shower, which has a multitude of different benefits.
It does. But, another podcast topic.
Yeah. But for me, it was actually wiring in the emotion of letting go of that version of myself that was not necessarily procrastinating, that was like holding myself back, and starting to step into that new evolved version of myself, and almost trying to draw that line there. So for me, I have this really strong emotional connection to that song and that ritual of having that cold shower that I don't think can be broken now. There are days where I've literally been so busy that I haven't done it, but there's about 3 days in about 6 months where that's happened. Like I've been too preoccupied. So whether I'm at home or whether I'm on holiday or I'm away, it's still something that I value deeply to execute on.
So that cold shower is basically your prompt to switch on, basically, for those tasks, the grueling tasks that you would normally feel like you're procrastinating on.
Yeah, that can be used as a tool for that. So it's a state change for sure. Like, so you're right. If I need to change state and move into that, then I can. But it was also just like allowing myself to stop holding myself back.
Yeah.
So it's almost like giving myself permission and linking the emotion of that to that habit. And also, and I'm sure we'll talk more about identity in the next podcast, but also moving towards the identity of myself that I want to step into and that I want to create for myself.
Yeah, I love that. I might start taking some more cold showers now too.
But that's the thing, right? Is like it's funny because it's not necessarily the cold shower. It was it was, and I'm sure you guys listening and you, Al, have had different stages of your life where you've been in like a moment of change or a moment of being sick of your own shit and like you're ready to like evolve. And that's different for so many different people. It looks different for everyone.
But you've really linked that to linked that emotion to that
habit,
particular thing. Yeah.
What's really cool is that if someone's finding like stepping into a habit quite challenging, what I encourage you to do is really reflect on like, what is it that you desire? What is it that you want? Like, why do you even want to do this habit? Or like, if you execute on this habit and you start to, and that gives you momentum and starts moving you forward towards your true goal, what it is that you desire, like, then identify and really draw on that emotion, because that's going to help get you through the shit days, the days when you're feeling deflated and, you know, you're not feeling motivated, especially, you know, I think a lot of people like commonly will say, I don't feel motivated at the moment. You know, but the question is like,
I said that to you the other day.
Sure. And like, that's okay, because we all have peaks and troughs. There's going to be days we're not feeling as motivated, but it's your ability, like we were saying at the start of the podcast, to really know that motivation it's in your power to change your state and take action. And sure, there's going to be days you don't want to, and that's okay. It's totally okay. But the main message is that it is in your power to change that motivation. The challenge is, and I feel like sometimes I hear this from a lot of clients in the gym specifically, but if you only do things when you're motivated, motivation isn't a constant thing, is it? Like, you've got to start to build these rituals and habits and almost promises to yourself. And I feel that was part of the ritual I created, but it's what's the promise you're making to yourself that's going to keep you going? Like, it's not always about being motivated.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting you say that about the motivation, because there's another, I guess, sentence that I actually referred to, or that I'm thinking of from that Tiny Habits book. And it's actually, people think that if they could only find the right motivator, that they would be able to do the thing that they should do, whatever that thing is, which is usually an abstraction. This unfortunately, this way of thinking puts the blame squarely on your ability or inability to motivate yourself. Instead, people need to focus on the ability and the prompt, not the motivation of doing the prompt. Do you know what I mean? So that comes back to our chat about, you know, people giving themselves this label of, I'm just not motivated to do that. It's nothing to do with motivation levels. It's more to do with the prompt and the design, basically the design of the habit that you're trying to set up. So that's a really good point that you made with that feeling unmotivated. I can definitely relate to, you know, habits and rituals being such a big driver in what I do. And I think two of the big things that I've also chat about with my own team members is just the simplicity of having their morning routine and an evening routine. Just some sort of, it could be like 2 steps, it could be 1 step.
Yeah.
For me, I have a morning routine, and I just said to Gina before we jumped onto the podcast today, like, I failed this morning at my morning routine. I consciously failed at it. I'm not really sure why. I got drawn into doing something, which then got, drawn out longer than I expected. And then I ended up just not having time to then go back and actually tick off that morning routine box. And so for me, if I don't hit that routine and that ritual in the morning, it really does mess me up a little for the day. And that's where I get that little feeling of not being motivated, which is what I would say to you. Like, I just don't feel motivated today. Yeah. I didn't tick the first box in my day this morning. That's why.
Yeah. And it's really great that you brought it up, because what's super crucial is the ability to have flexibility, right?
Yeah.
So we want to try and we've mentioned this in multiple podcasts before, but we want to try and avoid that black and white thinking, because it's the same thinking where when someone's, on a diet, and I'm putting in air quotes in, but say they're on a diet and they're either on or off, or for example, if they're trying to diet and then they have one little thing that's off plan, or one slip up, or one little chocolate bar, and then they go, stuff it, the day is ruined, I'll just do whatever I want, I'll eat whatever I want. So that black and white thinking is similar, where it can translate across to, if I haven't done my morning routine, then therefore it's going to be a shit day, or it's going to be a bad day, but it's having that flexibility where you could have maybe just an element of your morning routine, maybe not the whole routine, maybe just one or two things, and being okay with that. So flexibility, at the end of the day, flexibility is so important to move us towards our ultimate goals, because life isn't perfect. We've got to have flexibility. We've got to be able to do that.
Exactly. I think one of the biggest things that's really helped me in just probably the last 12 months even, Woz and I have moved around a lot in the last, however, 4.5 years we've been together, constantly moving countries, moving houses, so, I've always had this feeling of not quite feeling settled in a routine. But what I came to realize over the last however many years is that, with my lifestyle, and I'm sure so many other people's lifestyles, it's so important to remember that you do sort of need to have that flexibility. And in a sense, I'll now need to create different routines and rituals for whatever day I've got set up for the day ahead. So I think too often people think I need to do this at this time every day, and then they wake up on one day and it's just not going to be practical for them to do it on that day. And like you just said then, and like I did this morning, you kind of set yourself up to feeling like, oh, I've failed today because I didn't do that. When really, that is such a big part of that habits and goal setting, is being able to implement that flexibility and knowing that you might have different routines for different days. Or if you can't do that first step on a certain day for some reason, then you've got a fallback, or you've got another route that you then take instead. Exactly. So learning how to do that and have that flexibility is definitely something that's really important. Something that I'm currently trying to implement more in my own lifestyle, really. Still working on it. So.
And that's the thing as well, right? And it's almost like what we referred to on the pre-Christmas episode as well. But what's important about this topic of habits is what you do consistently over time. One slither, and I referenced the Christmas podcast, because saying that 1 week of the year, or that one day of the year where you overindulge, as the example, is such a speck of reality. Like, it doesn't matter, and you've got all the other days to account for. And it's the same when it comes to the morning routine. There may be, if you can find something that's sustainable and realistic for you, there may be 10, 15 days, for example, out of the year that it just doesn't work. I don't know. Would you say there's more for you, Al? It might be more. It might be 30 days out of the whole year where it's not perfect. Like, it doesn't matter, because all the other days, that's what counts.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's about what's more, what's the majority, what's more frequent. Where's the repetition, and where's the consistency? The outliers aren't as important.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, what do you think? I think we should leave it there for today. And we will continue to elaborate more on part 2. We thought it was a amazing topic and a big topic. So we better not try and do it in one episode.
Yeah, I think what we really wanted to share or chat about today more than anything was just to have people to realize that, one, they have the power, and two, they are not defined by their current habits or their current routines or whatever it is. That's not who you are. It's what you're doing. And of course, what you're doing over time does tend to create the person you're becoming. But it's so important to remember that we are in control of that. We're in control of who we want to become, what habits we want to do, what goals we want to achieve. And I think the first step towards being able to succeed in creating new habits or growing through whatever it is you want to grow through is actually being aware of it, and then knowing that you can change it if you want to.
And so with that, the question I wanted to ask everyone today is I guess, inviting you to bring awareness to your self-talk or your thinking over the next few days, and notice where you take away your power in a situation, or you give yourself permission to have that static way of thinking, like, this is how I am, insert whatever it is. So I just want you to kind of bring awareness to that. And it can take all shapes and sizes or form. It can take all sorts of forms for all of us. There's going to be somewhere in the next few days where we kind of, let ourselves be, what am I trying to say, Al?
I think
take away your own power.
But
yeah. What'd you say?
I just said, I think you nailed it in the first sentence.
Oh, perfect. Okay, cool. Done. Beautiful.
Great. Well, thanks for tuning in, guys, and stay tuned for part 2, where we are actually going to go through the details of how to start implementing your habits. And I hope you guys are enjoying the podcast so far. Gina, we're at episode number 10 already. Can you believe?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Exciting.
Yeah.
If you are enjoying, guys, don't forget to leave us a review if you get time as well. We would love that. And yeah, tune in and chat to you guys soon.
Amazing. See you guys.
The Body and Beyond podcast is for information purposes only. This podcast does not constitute advice or services, and the statements and views of the hosts and guests are not medical advice. The information provided should not be used for treatment or diagnosis purposes. Please discuss any information from this podcast with your healthcare professional before making any changes to your lifestyle.